Well, howdy, y'all. Welcome back to Left in Texas podcast. This is a special edition where we are basically interviewing the candidates who are in competitive runoffs in the Democratic primary. And in this very special episode, we are interviewing the candidates from Congressional District Texas 31, which is Williamson County on up north of Austin. I interviewed Dr. Christine Eady Mann. She actually ran last time. This is the district where MJ ran before. She is a healthcare professional, so she feels like this is her time to shine. She's been out there even amid COVID, giving health advice to people on the way to stay safe, and we talked about how that shaped her campaign. She's actually very charismatic, and she's pretty funny, and she likes to say she's the best man for the job. But I've seen her out there a lot, so this is going to be a quite competitive race. So, and Carrie, you interviewed her competitor in this race. You're on mute. Sorry, Carrie.
I keep muting it because my kids are in the background. So I interviewed Donna Imam, who is the other Democratic candidate in the runoff for Texas 31. I think this is the first time that she's run for office. And this is probably one of the most competitive districts in Texas. This is, as you mentioned, where MJ Hagar beat Christine Eady Mann in the primary in 2018 in this district. And then MJ Hagar went on to run a really close race against incumbent John Carter and only lost that race by like two and a half, less than 3 points. So one thing I think is interesting about this race is that both candidates, it's not really an establishment or moderate versus left in this one. I think they're both for Medicare for all. They're both for the Green New Deal. So it's going to be, Williamson County is running two lefties for this race. It's going to be interesting.
Which
I think it's a. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was going to say Williamson County also voted for Bernie Sanders, so that's you think, oh well, Williamson County maybe you shouldn't be, but Bernie carried the Democratic primary here, so people out here want to see people go to the left.
Right on. I think it's going to be to Texas's or the district's best advantage. Ultimately running up against John Carter, I think right now people have rediscovered a certain respect for science and for the medical field and for doctors. And so I think having doctor in front of your name, being on a political ticket these days is probably at least a little bit of an advantage for the people who are representing science at this point.
We have a special guest interview today with Donna Imam, who is running for Congress in the 31st District. Thanks for coming on today. Tell us about yourself and why you're running.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm Donna Imam. I'm, as Carrie mentioned, running in Texas's 31st District, which is all of Williamson County and Bell County. So Williamson County has all the north suburbs of Austin, Round Rock, Cedar Park, Leander, goes up to Georgetown, all the way through Bell County, which has Killeen, Temple, Belton, Parker Heights. And of course, Killeen is home to the largest armored vehicle military base in the entire United States. We have more veterans per square mile in this district than anywhere else in Texas. I'm an electrical and computer engineer. I have an 18-year career in technology, entrepreneurship, running large product lines. I ran Dell's $37 billion Latitude product planning. Actually, can I restart this?
Of course. Yeah. We'll say edit for Chris.
Okay. All right. I'll just start from the beginning if that's okay.
Sure. I'll just ask the question again. We'll just, all right. So Donna, tell us why you're running and a little about yourself.
Right. So my name is Donna Imam, and I'm running for U.S. Congress in Texas's 31st District. Texas's 31st District is all the north suburbs of Austin, Texas. That includes Round Rock, Leander, Cedar Park, goes up to Georgetown, and then we get into Bell County, which has Killeen, Temple, and Belton. It also is home to our country's largest armored vehicle military base. So we have more veterans per square mile in this district than anywhere else in Texas. I'm an electrical and computer engineer. I started out my career as a development engineer and then went into product management and entrepreneurship. I have an 18-year career in that background, but I also ran a nonprofit. And I was elected president of a 4,000 member nonprofit that provides free education and training to anybody who wants it in the greater Austin area. And during that time, I was really exposed to what working Texans face. What I realized is during the 2008-9 downturn in our economy, even though Austin had the lowest unemployment rate of the entire country at one point, we still had people who were highly educated, who had a lot of talent that were out of jobs for over 2 years in our area here. And what that led me to believe is that we need systemic change in the way our economy runs so that people who have worked their entire life all of a sudden don't find themselves in a position where they can't provide for the basic needs for their families. Healthcare. The premiums on healthcare are anywhere between $1,500 to $2,000 for a family of 4. So if you're out of a job, all of a sudden you find yourself in a position where you are unable to provide the basic needs. Now, early in my career, I also had a very tragic experience. Every single assembly worker in my company was laid off. Their jobs were moved to Mexico. And none of them had retraining, work retraining options. Many of them never worked a day in their lives. And that has always left a profound impact on me. I believe that we have practical, financially well thought out solutions to solve these problems. And I think we need people in Congress that can address these economic problems that more than 50% of Americans face today, living paycheck to paycheck. And it's not because they're not working hard enough or not looking for that better job. It's because our system just doesn't support it. And we need to transform our system in a way to give working Americans who create all the value in our country an opportunity to live the American dream and be able to pursue, life, liberty, and happiness like it was intended. So that's why I'm running for U.S. Congress.
That sounds great. It's a definite improvement over the current representation that the voters in District 31 have. What does the district look like? I mean, what do the chances look like? You mentioned it being the most competitive congressional race in Texas, and what the layout looks like. But what are the numbers looking like to y'all? Why do you think that it's the most competitive?
So this is definitely one of the most competitive races, and here's why. In 2018, Williamson County went blue. It went Democratic. And this entire district was lost by only a handful of votes, 8,000 votes or 2.9%. Now, since 2018, we had more than 50,000 people, young families with children looking for a better future, move into just one of 2 districts. That's just Williamson County. Bell County has also grown by leaps and bounds. And so we have this amazing opportunity to close this gap in Bell County. And here's why we can do this. In the primary, we had 6 people on the ballot here in Texas's 31st district, and we had 5 candidates actually running for office. One of them dropped out back in December 2019. Of all those candidates, our campaign won Bell County. And what majority of people in this area, in the greater Austin area, don't realize is that Bell County is majority minority county. The percentage of Black, Latino, Hispanic, and Asian make up the majority of people in Bell County. These are communities and people that have been completely left behind by the current Trump-endorsed GOP representative. Our campaign ran an extensive outreach program into communities in Bell County to reach out to them and let them know that they have this amazing opportunity and this amazing ability to have representation. They have a choice in representation, that they have someone who is actually working for their needs and what they need. And we collaborated extensively with organizations across the district to develop platforms like Equal Justice for All, which was done much prior, back in late 2019, well before the current environment in our country, well before the George Floyd video went viral. And we were very specific in understanding the community's needs and talking to their needs. And that's how we accomplished this. So our campaign can close this 2.9% gap, and we can do it in Bell County, and we can reach out to these communities that have been left behind. That's why this race is competitive, and that's why we can flip this district.
That sounds like a good plan. I wonder how that has changed, how COVID has changed. I mean, certainly from the other campaigns that we've talked to, there's probably no more door-to-door canvassing. How are you, everyone's had to sort of retool and figure out. So,
Yes.
So what things are y'all doing differently? How are you reaching voters in the age of COVID?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have to find extremely creative ways to have these conversations with voters. And we have been very successful in doing that. Phone banking is obviously the most obvious way to have a real engaging conversation with voters. So we're utilizing that, but we're also utilizing many other different avenues to get in front of the voter. You're absolutely right. In the primary, our advantage is that we could knock on a door and have a conversation face to face. And there's nothing that beats that personal touch. But we're doing the next thing that's available. We want to over communicate. We want to let them know that they have a choice. We want to let them know that this race is super close and how important it is to come out in the runoff. But you're absolutely right that the COVID environment has made it extremely difficult to get out this message. And in addition to that, as you know, Texas moved the primary from March 26th out to July 14th. They expanded the early voting timeline to 2 weeks. So communicating to voters is an extreme challenge. Letting them know that this has changed, letting them know that they have a choice in representation has been an extreme challenge, but we've done it in multiple different ways. One way that we've done it is over the span of March and April, we brought in some of the state's most well-known and physicians and ER directors that have understanding of what's going on in ER facilities across Central Texas onto Zoom calls. So every Sunday at 4 p.m., we have brought in somebody different, whether it's talking about coronavirus, whether it's talking about the state's ability to go blue, this district's ability to flip this district, to bring new representation. So we've done that. And early on in 2019, we formed these relationships because we were talking about healthcare and how do we solve the problem of covering 80 million people who are over 80 million people that are either uninsured or underinsured, right? So we were able to bring those people in, and we were able to bring in ER experts who were over coronavirus departments right here in Round Rock to bring a local view and understanding as Texas opens up. Are we prepared? And these types of informational Zoom calls have really engaged the voters across this district, and we have made a huge effort to reach out to them and let them know that this is happening. So that's how we've basically overcome this challenge.
I love it. I mean, I think the candidates who have been able to pivot and come up with creative ways to still reach voters are the ones that are, just my theory, will do the best. And I'm glad to see that your campaign and other campaigns are, coming up with creative solutions. I mean, one thing that's occurred to me is, a lot of these tools were there, but they had been seen as kind of add-ons or not part of like the core way. And I think that's really shifted, that it's accelerated how much of a, digital organizing tools are really essential to campaigns. And maybe accelerated that by a couple of campaign cycles that it otherwise would have. So I guess silver linings. Looking for all of that. Well, I'm glad to hear you guys are doing that. So the the special, this isn't the special election, there's a special election for other races combined with the primary runoff that, as you mentioned, was moved by the governor from May 26th to now be July 14th, right?
That's correct.
And he also just recently issued an order adding a second week of early voting.
That's correct.
So, and the voter registration deadline to be able to vote in the primary runoff is June 15th.
Yes,
right? So that's
a couple of days.
It snuck up on us all. So,
Right.
and folks who didn't vote in the primary can vote in the primary runoff. And
Absolutely.
right. So I think the only restriction is if you voted in the Republican primary, you cannot vote in a Democratic primary runoff. But otherwise, everybody can vote.
That's correct.
Wonderful. Well, tell us how to find your campaign and if they want to know more about you and how they can get involved.
So we're at votefordonna.com. And if you'd like to get engaged with our campaign, please do. Look, we're really changing the way we're connecting with voters. And for the first time, that Black girl in Killeen is going to be telling her parents, hey, you need to vote in this runoff. And that Hispanic Latino girl in Temple is saying, this is interesting. Mom, you got to register to vote. That's what our campaign is experiencing. We are getting these messages from people across this district saying, wow, for the first time, we feel like somebody's actually hearing us. And that when we're hearing them, because we are talking to healthcare, which every single person in this district needs. And we see in this coronavirus environment how Black Americans have been impacted and are dying at almost twice the rate. And that's because they've had underlying health issues. And the underlying health issues stem from the fact that there have been no access, no availability of preventative care for many, many communities, especially communities in the lower socioeconomic areas. We are changing this entire way of running a campaign and how we're energizing people. So please come out and join our campaign. We're at votefordonna.com. You can email us at contact@votefordonna.com. And if you love our campaign and what we're doing and how we're changing the way we engage with voters, please donate to our campaign on our website. We would love your support. We need the help, and we can do this. Our campaign can win this district, bring new representation, and make Texas a wonderful place to live in for every single person in Williamson County and Bell County and across our country.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we wish you the best of luck. I'm going to be watching this race closely.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. I really appreciate the time.
So we'll go ahead and get started. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Christine Mann, for joining us. You are in a runoff in July 14th for Texas 31 to challenge John Carter. You want to give us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I am a family practice doctor in Cedar Park, Texas. I've got 20 plus years experience working and training in the medical field, which perfectly positions me to go into Congress and tackle the problems that we have with the healthcare system that are just being further exacerbated by this coronavirus pandemic. The experiences that I have are not something that can be replicated just with a briefing book that someone on your team can put together. You know, I've got that 20 years in-person experience, both as a doctor and 11 years experience running a medical practice where I was responsible for billing and contracting and working with insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies. So if you want an ally in Congress to fix healthcare, I've got the background to be able to do that. I've also been politically active for more than a decade, and I have been working on legislation at the state level with Representatives Gina Hinojosa and Representative John Busey to expand Medicaid in the state of Texas. We tried to enact a universal health care system called the Healthy Texas Act for Texas. We have worked on expansion of maternal health access and mental health access. So I've got the political background and the policy background to go right into Congress and get to work on day one.
Yeah, that is unique opportunity for you right now, given the COVID pandemic. But what actually inspired you to run for Congress? What got you in this game?
Well, I've been, as I said, politically active for more than a decade. I started doing political work with President Obama's campaign back in 2007. That was my first experience knocking on doors and making phone calls. I started voter registration in Texas. You have to be certified to be a voter registrar, and I've been doing that for over a decade. And over the years, I gradually increased my political work. I'm the person that has been at the table with you for my adult life, where you just say, stop talking about politics, because I love talking about politics, and I've been doing it forever. And so over the years, I started helping other candidates get elected. I've been on the campaigns of more than a dozen candidates who have been elected to office in this district. And so I decided that it was time for my voice to be the one at the head of the ticket and get involved. The final piece of the puzzle was the 2016 election of Donald Trump. And that was the thing that pushed me over the edge to doing it rather than waiting till I retired from my medical practice.
So why John Carter? What made you choose this seat out of all the seats and offices available for you to run in?
Well, the reality is I actually don't have a lot of seats I am eligible to run for, because I live in something called an ETJ, where I am not within city limits.
Mm-hmm.
So it limits some of the seats that I can run for. The other thing is that our state level seats only pay about $7,000 a year. And unless you're independently wealthy, it's almost impossible to take that kind of a salary to work at a state level seat. So it was actually partially a limitation on the seats that were available, and partially because I visited John Carter's office in 2017. I was the leader of a group called Wilco Indivisible, and I organized constituents to go talk to him in his office. And after one visit, he turned us away and told us that we were not allowed to make any more visits to his office. And so that didn't sit right with me, and I felt like he needed someone who was going to be there for people, who would listen to everyone. And that's what I've done through my 3 years of campaigning. I am always available. I'm always out in public. I'm always answering questions. Anyone can come to me and talk to me anytime.
Mm-hmm. And in 2018, this is the race where MJ Hager, who's now running for U.S. Senate, ran.
Yes.
She came within just a few points of I think he got like 50.6% of the vote. So he barely hit that 50% threshold. So I'm curious about this race now. What kind of energy are you getting from people who are maybe paying attention to this race now, who weren't paying attention to it before? What's sort of the energy?
Well, I'll just remind you and your audience, I was the runner-up in 2018. I ran that race. I was second place behind MJ Hagar. So my team and I have been building coalitions for 3 years. We have our boots on the ground. We have people who are working to make this campaign successful in November, who have been working on it for several years. And so there is a ton of interest in that. It takes time to flip a seat like this. This is not a starter position. The team that I've put together have worked on 37 different political campaigns in total. We are an experienced team. We last year raised more money than even MJ Hagar did in the year before an election. And that's what it takes to flip one of these seats. And so people see that and they know we're serious. They know we can do it. And that's why we have got the support that we did. That's why I came in first in the primary. That's why I won 63% of the precincts in the primary. So we've got a sustainable team, and we are ready to go to take on John Carter in November, and everyone is seeing that.
I also noticed that the Democratic primary got more votes than the Republican primary by almost
Yes.
5,000 or so votes. So there seems to be definitely a lot of interest in this particular race. And the projections were that we were going to have record turnout for 2020. That was before
Yes.
COVID. But all the things that I'm hearing from insiders are that they still expect that to be the case.
Yes, absolutely. I just talked to someone who runs the elections for the Democratic Party in our district, and they've already gotten requests for 5,800 mail-in ballots. Before COVID, voter registration was exceeding the expectations of the Democratic Party for this district.
Mhm.
There is so much energy, and on the voter registration side, as I mentioned, that's something I've been doing for years. I had a group called the VDR Collective in Williamson County, and we have been working as hard as we can given the limitations that we've got with COVID-19, and we're going to hopefully be able to ramp that back up after the kind of that pandemic fear dies down. And we're looking at innovative ways to register voters when we can.
Yeah, and so I looked at your social media, which is great. You have a great sense of humor. You're saying you're the man for the job. But I noticed in your pictures that you are out, and looks like you're registering voters. You're wearing a mask. So
Mhm.
I'm curious as how are you adjusting to the changes from when you started and when you ran last time? A very
Mhm.
different campaigning scenario. How have you adjusted? What are you doing differently now?
Yeah, it's a little sad to me. I absolutely loved knocking on doors and getting to know people in person. I loved being at group meetings where I could interact with people, and it's hard not having those things to rely on. So what we have done is moved to digital outreach. I hold a weekly town hall meeting where anyone can register and join in and ask questions. We answer every question that anyone asks of us. And so we are trying to make ourselves as accessible as possible on social media. And then we have also moved to digital outreach that my team is working on with phone calls and text banking and so forth.
Hmm. So your wheelhouse is healthcare, and health issues. Definitely something that's a major issue in Texas, as you mentioned earlier. What are some of the other issues that are resonating with voters in the district?
The second thing before COVID was environmental concerns. And I'm very excited that people are putting that high on their list and on their radar because climate change is a crisis. I was endorsed by the Austin Environmental Democrats because of my strong positions on climate change and protecting the environment. That being high up on the list is it's a positive, not just for the district, but also for the country, because the more we can elect people who have that high on their radar, the greater the chances that we can solve those problems. And although my training is in healthcare, that training includes science, and science is at the core of what we need to understand to tackle climate change. So it's a skill set that I can add to that discussion when I'm elected.
Hmm. And so, kind of thinking about the state of the race, John Carter's probably maybe trying to be a little more prepared for this one than he was last time.
Mhm.
He's had a lot of his colleagues retire from Texas because they don't want to be in the minority and they see the writing on the wall. I noticed that he's got about 800,000 cash on hand.
Mhm.
What kind of activity have you seen from him? Is he staying? Is he laying low? Is he out there campaigning, backing Trump? What is he? What kind of activity is he doing, or have you seen?
I have. He votes with Donald Trump 98% of the time. So we already have that as our baseline. He has been laying relatively low, but it's interesting that every time it gets close to election time, John Carter kind of changes his tune a bit. So right now, we have a huge controversy going on in the district with the sheriff of Williamson County,
Hmm.
and there have been calls for his resignation. We have the issues going on with the protests in support of Black Americans who are dying at the hands of police violence. And he has actually started to say some kind of, sort of, maybe borderline things that might make it sound like he would be persuadable on those issues, but that is not his 20-year history, and everyone in this district knows that. So he can keep saying those things online, but the proof is in the pudding, and actions speak louder than words, and we know what his actions have been, voting with Donald Trump 98% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting because this is the kind of issue, the Black Lives Matter mantra wasn't invented in 2020. This was something years ago, and it was basically ignored, pushed to the side. Certainly, the kind of language we're hearing from the governor on down is a lot different than what we heard a few years ago. And it's clear that I always trust that Republicans have just been so on message. So when they start saying this kind of stuff, you know that there's something to it. There's a real movement afoot here. People are just finding out about this event you're talking about. Mr. Javier
Ambler.
Yeah, he. I can't watch these videos, but I read the articles, and it's just devastating. And I hear the calls from elected officials for his resignation, local elected officials, state elected officials, and these guys are so soft, and they can't take a stand when it's clear injustice. So it's really, unfortunate, but it's good that it looks like there's somebody there who can really go out and represent people and bring that kind of leadership that we need back to this district, this part of the state that is growing very fast, right? And changing. Have you talked to anyone about? Are people even aware about? The census that's going on and the importance of that? Is that something? I feel like that's just dropped off the map. In 2019, everybody talked 2020 is the census. It's so important.
Right.
And now COVID and the protests and everything is just, I feel like it's slipping under the radar, and that could hurt us if we don't really pay attention and make sure people are counted.
Yeah, I agree. There are a couple of local activists who are still talking about it that I am in a circle with. They're people who are supporters of the campaign, so I see what they're doing with it. And it is critical, and especially in a state like Texas where we are so gerrymandered. And if we don't get the representation that we need, we're not going to be able to address those types of issues. So I filled my forms out a while ago, and I hope that everybody else is on track to fill those out. But you're right. It's not nearly as prominent as you would expect it to be if those other issues were not at the forefront.
Mm-hmm. So as a healthcare professional, we're about to go back out and to vote. And, we had this huge fight over vote by mail. It's super unfortunate that the suppression, they're able to use a pandemic to continue to suppress the vote. What kind of advice are you giving to voters when you talk to them about being safe when they're at the polls?
Yeah, I talk about this actually a lot just in general on my weekly town halls. We do quite a bit of focus on COVID-19. And the message that I give people is that besides staying at home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every activity you do has some amount of risk. And so you have to kind of quantify what that risk is. And the longer you are in a small space with a crowded number of people with no masks on, and if you're doing activities that require a lot of heavy breathing, like a gym, or if you're people don't recognize that choirs and singing is an activity that requires deeper breathing. So that's your high risk situations, and everything less than that has less risk. So if you go to the polling place and you do the same kinds of things that you do in the grocery store, you go in, you are prepared with your ballot, you know who you're going to vote for, you take your own pen or stylus, you wear a mask, you use hand sanitizer, and you stay 6 feet away from the other people in the room, you're not going to be stuck in a small crowded room for a long period of time. So while I wish that Texas had done the right thing and just all out said mail-in ballots for everyone, in the meantime, there are ways to stay safe when you're voting.
That's good. I mean, because we don't want to scare people into not voting, and we just can't have that. And, I remember 2006, the state of Texas moved to electronic voting machines, and many of our poll workers are retired or elderly, and a lot of them retired from the election work because they were like, I don't want to learn this new system. This is the signal I'm going to take to retire. And we had a hard time filling those roles. So I'm very concerned that a lot of these election workers may say, it's not worth my risk. It's not worth my health And so, I'm hoping that people choose to vote early. That's always something we can do that will keep distance and reduce the amount of time that you're standing there, like you said, which is really important. So again, I just want to say thank you so much for taking some time out of campaigning to come talk to us. And this is your opportunity to say anything else, any closing words, and tell everybody how they can get in touch with your campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. My campaign website is Christine4Congress.com. I sure hope that I can get your support if you're in my district. We have been endorsed by almost every elected Democrat in this district, and they understand that I've been putting in the work, that this is one of those putting words into action. And that's how you know how people are going to act, is how they're campaigning. That's how you know what they're going to do for you when they're in Congress, is they don't just say words, they show you what they're going to do. So please join the campaign. We've got some great momentum behind us right now. Check us out at Christine4Congress.com. Volunteer, donate. I can't wait till July 14th so we can get this done and move on towards taking on John Carter.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again and good luck out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.